Good morning, everyone. We're so glad that you could join us for today's webinar on our Dynamics GP year-end event. I'm Katie Erickson. I'm the Marketing Director here at Boyer & Associates. And our presenters today, our presenter today is going to be Ron Peterson. Unfortunately, Darren is out sick, so he is not going to be joining us, but Ron has graciously agreed to take over the payroll presentation as well. So he will be doing that portion today. Just a couple quick housekeeping tips for you. I did want to let you know, yes, we are recording this, and yes, you will get the recording. It should come as an email from Boyer and Associates, and you'll probably get that later today still. We also have a couple handouts that I'll be dropping in the chat later that you can use to follow along throughout the webinar with Ron. And then questions, if you have any questions, as always, please go ahead and put those either in the chat or in this Q&A panel. There are two options there, and we'll do our best to answer those on the session if we're able to, or follow up with you afterwards if we're unable to get to that. Go ahead and go to the next slide then there, Ron.
Advance.
It doesn't quite want to advance for you, does it?
No, it doesn't. Let me see if I can do it that way. There we go.
There we go. So here's our agenda. I'm going to do a quick little overview, or I'm sorry, a quick little about Boyer section. And then Ron is actually going to come back to this slide and talk through a little more about what all he will be covering for you today.
Very good.
But just a little bit about Boyer. You guys are our clients, so obviously, we do GP, right? What you may or may not know is that we have added a lot of offerings over the past few years. We now, of course, do Business Central, Cloud ERP. We do migrations to the cloud, as well as we've added the CRM solutions and Power Platform. So kind of on that flip side of ERP, but still business management software. And then new this year, we added Microsoft 365 and kind of along with that license management. So for example, if you have if you have, Dynamics GP and Dynamics 365 CRM and your Microsoft Office 365, we can help you actually combine all those licenses, consolidate them onto one partnership, and that just helps you manage it a little bit better and gives you a little bit of a discount. And of course, our support plans we'll talk about a little bit here too. Speaking of cloud migrations, as I'm sure you all know, GP does have an end date now. It's a ways in the future still, so you've got some time. But if that is part of your 5-year plan, which it probably should be at this point, that is something that Boyer is very able to help you do. We've actually already migrated at least 30 of our GP clients to Business Central. It's probably more. I think that's an older number. But just based on how it's gone for those different clients, we've put together a pretty streamlined package that kind of walks you through, okay, here's all the steps that you need to do and get it done quickly. So of course, that's going to include an assessment of your current GP system. Then, that initial migration and setup of Business Central, configure it to meet your needs. Maybe you want it to work similar to GP. Maybe there's different processes that you're looking forward to with a cloud solution. Kind of work through how you want that set up. And then, of course, your testing and final migration. One real big bonus to this particular package is that Foundation Plus. So that's kind of that post-go live support to help you get used to your new system, because it's not exactly GP in the cloud. It is a new system, but we are definitely here to help you make that migration and make the process a little smoother. Also wanted to make sure that you are aware, Microsoft does have funds available for you to kind of help assist with that. So for example, if you are just kind of wanting to assess how well Business Central would fit for your business needs, we can help you get some funding to help do that process, as well as when you actually move to that implementation, there are discounts for the fact that you are on a current on-premise system. Of course, there are a couple caveats with that. Yes, you do have to be on GP 2015 or newer, and you do need to be current on your Microsoft maintenance to be eligible for those funds. And as always, our support options. If you guys have been clients for a while, you might have noticed these have changed a few times over the last year or two. I think they're going to stay this way for a while, so yay. But just to go through them again in case it's been a while since you've seen, We do have our standard support. That's going to be kind of your traditional break fix, your T&M hours, that type of thing. We have our ultimate support. That's where you got the prepaid block of hours. So 25, 50, 75, 100, however you've prepaid. A real nice thing here is that we are making sure as much as possible you're working with the same person or the same group of people so that there's that dedicated resource who already knows your system. You don't have to, explain everything new to them every single time. They're already familiar with a little bit of how your system works and what you need. So that's a huge bonus there with that ultimate support. The Foundation Plus support, this is going to be more for if you're thinking about migrating to Business Central, because this is more of our cloud support. So it covers that, initial implementation of Business Central, your typical break fix support, but then also Business Central has a couple wave releases, they call them, in the spring and the fall, where they release that new functionality. Just helps make sure that you're rolling that out properly throughout the whole system, throughout all your users. And then also if, in between, switching from GP to Business Central, there might be a few things you're like, oh, well, I really want to also connect this extra little piece or some of those additional enhancements. That's something that you get with that Foundation Plus support. And I did want to mention real quickly on all this, some of you may still be on one of our legacy support plans. Just keep in mind that we are phasing those out, and at some point you will probably be going to one of these support plans.
Very good.
And sweeten the deal a little bit, because you're here for a year-end event and we appreciate you taking time out to be with us today. We do have some discounts to help you start the new year off right. So if you are looking at that migration plan, you are looking at the Foundation Plus package with the migration, we have a $250 discount on that for you, as well as if you're wanting to stay on that ultimate support or one of those prepaid plans, then there's a $25 off your hourly rate for that. Caveat there, please do sign up before the end of the year. And you can contact either Kate and Purtle, who is our client care representative. I'm sorry, Kate and Purtle is our sales client representative, or Mike Vernig, who is our client care director. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Ron. Ron Peterson has been with Boyer for 22 years now, right, Ron?
I think that's right. Yep.
Yeah, so he's, as I think all of you already know, very well versed in GP, knows exactly what you need to close out the year, and I know he's got a great presentation for you. So I'm going to hand it off to you, Ron.
Well, thank you very much. So yes, we went through the about Boyer. Then for the overview, or for the year-end closing, I'll go and do a little bit of an overview. I'll be looking at, and we'll be sharing sort of the document that should be out there available for you to download. Katie's kind of uploading that into this call. And then so we'll go a little bit of an overview, and then we'll proceed through the modules in probably much the same order that you would if you were closing them yourself. Other than payroll, what we're going to do is we're going to go through all the modules, inventory, receivables, etc., up through general ledger, and then we'll do payroll last, because we have relatively few number of our customers doing payroll, and if they're doing payroll, they may be doing that as one of the first modules they close at the start of the year. But for those of you that don't have payroll, after we do the GL, you can drop off the meeting if you'd like at that point, and we'll kind of proceed ahead with the payroll close. Now, Darren had been prepared to do fixed assets and payroll, and finding out that he isn't feeling well today, I'm going to jump in. Hopefully I can cover it all pretty well. But one thing I'll say is that the process for this year really hasn't changed at all. So I'll try to go through it quickly, be succinct, and see if we can even finish up a little bit early, maybe. I'm going to, let's see here. Maybe one other slide here. Some key year-end notes, and this was similar to last year. that the IRS is now requiring businesses to file their 1099s and W-2s and things like that electronically. However, GP doesn't do that electronic filing. You can search, and if you've used a company before, utilize them again, or there's a couple of companies here that are very, very active in doing those filings. And in the documents, I mean, you could search for them, or we've got links to them in the document that you can download also. Um, and then also, if you're on the update from last year, 18.6, I believe it is. Um, at that point, for doing 1099s, all of them you can do without having to purchase forms. You can print to blank paper. It will create all the boxes for you and everything. So um, with that, let's jump into kind of the process here. Share my other screen, and I'm going to just to help focus and keep the bandwidth optimized. I'm going to turn off my camera here, and what's this other thing off? Okay, so the manual that you have is this, and I'm going to jump up to about page 10 in here. So some of the earlier pages have just some background where you can get assistance, things like that. So yeah, and it's going maybe about page 11 we'll start with. So as we talked about, even in the one slide, and this is on page 11 in that manual, they talk about the year-end close overview and what modules and what order you would typically be closing those. And if you have inventory, you'd probably be doing that inventory module followed by, receivables, payables. If you've got some sales tax type thing, you'd be kind of closing that. Payroll, of course, is independent as it's listed there. You've got fixed assets can be closed at any time prior to doing your GL. So that could be, anytime, within those modules above. And then if you are looking to do some file maintenance on your GL, you could be doing that before you do your GL close. One comment that, the checklists and stuff that we have included in the manual, and we've mentioned this in the years past, they have a lot of backups listed. So they'll go through a couple of steps and say, take a backup, and then go through a couple more steps and take another backup. Decide for yourself how often you need to take those backups. If you're proceeding through, several steps and you've gone through it quickly, maybe you feel like the last backup is fine. In other words, if you do run into an issue, you could always go back to that last backup. Some of the smaller clients, I wind up doing a lot of the modules all at the same time. We'll take one backup before they get started, or if we're assisting them, we'll take one backup, go through closing all the modules, and then take another one in the end. So we're not doing nearly as many as is being called for in the setup checklists, but Microsoft is being very careful in terms of how many they're incorporating in their steps. So keep that in mind with regard to backups. The other thing on here is each of the modules will talk about closing and opening fiscal periods and the like. I'll start with that, just showing you how to, set up the new year and how to close some modules as we go, so we won't repeat that step for each of the modules. Okay, I'm going to, and then if we're going to focus on it as if it was you are a calendar year company. If you are uh, a fiscal year company, the steps of what modules you close at year end or fiscal year end versus calendar year end are a little bit different, and the manual outlines that. But for simplicity, I will focus on the calendar year end type close. Okay, so I'm gonna proceed ahead here. And I said we'd look at the fiscal periods first of all under administration. And if I come down under company, there's the fiscal periods. At this point, if you haven't done so, you could even create a new fiscal year right now for 2025, and you could close everything to make sure somebody doesn't accidentally post out there. But I'm in demo system and it's got future dates and things like that, so they don't have to keep updating it all the time. But you can see here, we've got, in fact, years, because we've demoed this a few times, up to 3030. But if I needed to do a new year, I just type in the new year. I identify the first day of the year, the last day of the year, say calculate with the number of periods, and it's going to create all those periods for us. Sometimes it's helpful to go ahead and change the namings of these, give it the calendar month or whatever period name that you might have for those. Management reporter can grab those, pull them in, and that might be helpful from that standpoint. If you do create a new fiscal year and don't want everybody to be or accidentally be posting into it, you could close all. So it's all closed, and then you're back using your regular, focusing on your current open year. Similarly, as you're going along, if we're in period 12, if go back to the current year that they have here in the system, you are able to close modules like this as you go slowly. So you could still have the GL open, but virtually everything else closed, or GL and payables could still be open, and all the other modules are closed. So you can close and open just as simply as opening this screen, clicking the checkbox, whether it's opened or closed. So nothing is going on other than stopping the posting of transactions in that module for that period. So you can open it and close it. As simple as that. Okay. So that is kind of fiscal periods. The first module we're going to cover is inventory, and that is on page 13 in your user guides. And as we've mentioned before, closing modules is primarily what GP is doing, is setting up new buckets for the new fiscal year, to put transactions into summarize data, and close out and total up year-to-date effects in the year that you're closing. Inventory is the one that if you are using it, that they do suggest to close as soon as you can. And they even suggest, Microsoft does, to close it fairly soon in the year. What they're suggesting is that if you've got 2025 transactions you need to be creating, sales invoices, things of that nature, they say go ahead and print the invoices, do the transactions. They recommend putting it in a batch and not posting it yet. Finish up all your 2024 transactions and then close the inventory module. That gives it really the cleanest way of keeping some of the year-to-date buckets and the like open, or clean, in terms of what that activity has been, the quantities that have been sold, etc. But quite frankly, few companies will take it to that full degree because you can still do some inquiries by date ranges and things like that for the year, and it'll pick it up correctly. But if you want it as clean as you possibly can, that is the suggestion, and it's outlined in the manual there also. Um, so going through the steps then starting on page 13, they're suggesting you get all your 2024 transactions in and posted, which is step one there. Step two, they recommend trying to, if you're using inventory, to reconcile your quantities, make sure your quantities are correct with all the different transactions and things, ins and outs and purchases and sales that have been going on. And there's the reconcile button here under utilities to do that. A further recommendation, if you've got the time to do it, and we highly would recommend it, is to reconcile in some of the other modules first. And what I mean by that is if on an inventory item, we come in here and look on a particular item, under quantities, it's tracking how much are in sales orders. And down here, it's also tracking how much are in purchase orders. And it's reaching into those modules to grab those quantities. So one of the best things to do to get these quantities correct is before you reconcile inventory, go into the purchasing module first, and reconcile the quantities you have there. Um, and so you get all your AP purchase order um, quantities correct. Then go into sales, reconcile those, get those quantities correct, so that when you are, excuse me here, in inventory and you're reconciling the quantities within inventory, and as it connects to purchasing and sales, it's grabbing good quantities from there also. Each one of those reconciles, depending on your size, the amount of transactions you have, and how large your inventory is. Each one of those reconciles can take some time. You don't have to do them all at the same time. You can even start, a few days before you're going to do your inventory or right around year end. Go ahead and do it in the evening when other users are logged off the system. Start that reconcile. Hopefully, it'll be all completed by the morning. And then the next day, maybe you could do your sales, run that reconcile. And then when you get ready to do your inventory, and you could do this even a day or two before you're even doing your closing, hopefully you're not going to have any errors, in the last day or two. But under the reconcile, it's just, hey, selecting all your item numbers, running through and doing that reconcile. So a little tip there for you, trying to do your purchasing and sales first. Moving on then, they also suggest after you kind of have those numbers kind of reconciled and trying to get that done probably before the year end, because then you do a physical inventory count, making sure your quantities are right from that perspective also. On page 14, they talk about a couple of options to be able to do that beyond the scope of what we're going to talk about here today. They also then list on step 4 on page 14 quite a variety of reports you can print to have available. And when I say print, I'm usually saying, hey, now point it to a PDF type file. Some of these reports can be very, very large. Similarly, when you're doing your reconciles, go to a PDF from that perspective also. And you can decide what reports you want to have done under step 4. You might not be tracking, for example, serial numbers or lot numbers. After you get those reports and the like, they're calling for a backup on the bottom of page 14. But after you're there and you're kind of ready to go, you're ready to do your year-end closing. And under routines here, under inventory and routines, it's the year-end close. And you've got a few options here. Kind of closing inventory is a little more complicated than some of the other modules because of kind of these steps we're going through. But um, generally speaking, you're not generally removing discontinued items necessarily. You can kind of exclude those from your navigation list. And if you're wondering how to do that and set that as the default, we can easily help you with that. Moving sold lot attributes is kind of the same type of thing. Um, let's see. And also removing sold receipts. You generally don't want to do it because of if you've got returns that might be happening. However, if you want to trim down your data size a little bit, you could select this and then save, go back a year or two just in case you have some returns, and you could be able to identify that particular sale and the various costs. So I wouldn't do this without putting in a date and even question whether you need to remove those. Um, Update standard costs. This would be if you're doing periodic type valuations, FIFO or LIFO. So you've got that option. Once you've selected your options here, it's a matter of clicking the process and letting the system run. Do note that there's no report that prints for the year-end type closing. It'll just kind of finish at that point. They do recommend, again, taking another backup after you're done with it. But if you're smaller and you're rolling right into the next module, you may not be doing that extra backup at that point. Okay, that is inventory. Um, Receivables would be typically the next module you would be doing then under the receivables area. I'm on page 19 in the manual now. This is uh, another module that you'd be doing that is a little bit sensitive with regard to the dates. They do a pretty good job of um, tagging transactions and things so that it can go into proper company buckets. But under your summary, period summary, let's see if we got a, just going to look at receivable summary. Yeah, no, let's try to. Under some of these summary type views, they do have fiscal year, calendar year, and then amount since last close. So again, Microsoft would say, hey, if you've got new transactions, try to close them. You can go ahead and enter them, put them in a batch, and don't post them until you close the module. Probably not that absolute necessary. It's the best case scenario, but most companies still are trying to get things posted and move on, and they can always do summary type views based upon selecting for a particular fiscal year, and it'll still give you some of that information for you. It just does describe this on 19 in the top of page 20, those summary buckets. But for a fiscal calendar year type close, on page 20, of course, you want to get all your transactions for 2024 posted and in. Go ahead and print your customer statements. They're calling for a backup at that point. And then the next step they've got highlighted on page 4 is closing the year. One other tip I would give you, and I've noticed a few customers that still aren't aware of it or know that they should be periodically doing it, and it is paid transaction removal. Now that sounds like something you probably wouldn't want to do. I don't want to be removing stuff and paid transactions in the system, but this can be a very helpful utility routine that you can use. What this does really is move things from, if I go to a customer, it moves them from an open bucket status into history, keeping your open buckets a little cleaner and getting all those paid transactions moved into history. Doing that makes it so that things like open trial balances and things like that, that's all focused on that open bucket, is going to go faster. If you haven't moved several years and many, many transactions over to history, it's got to filter through all of those also. So, being able to do paid transaction removal essentially moves those transactions from open into history. So a little tip there. And if you haven't done it for a long time, maybe you want to reach out to us if you're really interested in starting to do it, because we probably will be advising you to do this in smaller chunks, because it could take quite a while to move if you've got lots of customers and lots of transactions. Let's see. So close. So the step of closing the year after you have all your transactions done and your new fiscal year set up, it's just year-end close. And here you'd select whether you're doing the calendar and fiscal year, in other words, you're a calendar year company, or whether you're just doing one of them. It'll show you the last time it's been closed, and good to print a report, print it or point it towards a PDF file first so you can look at it and decide whether you're just going to save it there or actually physically print that out. And okay. On page 21, there's an optional piece there is closing the sales tax, and it guides you through the steps to be able to do that also. And it's calling for a backup. But in addition, or the next module, I should say, would be the purchasing module. And this will be very similar to what you've done in sales. You've got those various buckets, this year, last year, type of things, trying to get transactions, into the various, setting up the new buckets for the new year and doing your closeout of activity is essentially what the year-end close is going to do. And it talks about those steps on 23 and 24, 23 rather, yeah, what it's doing during that process. Page 24 starts with all the steps that you'd want to be doing. And of course, that first step is get all your transactions completed for the 2024 year. Go ahead and print a trial balance for the year. And again, you may want to, if you're doing it for the whole year, you probably want to um, um, do that to a PDF as a destination again. Um, um, let's see. They also talk about installing potentially a payroll update, just in case there's some things with regard to 1099s and things of that nature. But there is no compliance changes this year. So you wouldn't have to do that, right at that particular time. Uh, but the next step would be then getting ready to do the printing of your 1099s. And coming in here, you can print an edit list by coming in, selecting the print 1099 window, coming in, filling out your address IDs, your various information that you want, the type that you're looking to do, and then you could go and say print which is going to take and actually print an edit list as opposed to printing the forms. You can start validating some of your information there. You can go to non-employee compensation, print those, print the edit for that, also validating some of the information. On page 25, they talk about if you're having to edit some of this information as you're doing your validations, and you find that maybe something has been missed. There's a couple of edit screens you can use to help get things back in sync properly. If, for example, you set up some vendors during the year and you forgot to mark them as a 1099 vendor or didn't get it marked right away, there's an under utilities, there's an update 1099 information window, and it talks through it in the manual, the steps to use this to flag vendors for 1099s, or if they're inaccurately flagged, to unflag them. You can, or if they were flagged to the wrong type, you can change them from a miscellaneous to non-employee compensation, etc. So lots of options you can do with this particular window. But then the other option is maybe they've been flagged, but maybe you've had some transactions go with them and the numbers aren't quite right. In other words, an invoice has come in, some of it is 1099able, maybe some of it wasn't. You have an option under transactions, under edit 1099 transaction information, where you can select a particular vendor, see all the transactions, be able to adjust amounts, what type of 1099 boxes, etc. So you've got a couple of very good windows there that help you adjust some of your 1099 information correctly. Page 25 and 26. Then it gets at the bottom of 26 talking about printing your 1099s. And again, this should be very similar to what you had last year. You can select the type after you kind of fill everything out. And from form types, what you're going to want to do is use one wide width box if you're using the plain paper. Same under all these various types. You've got that one wide width box. Make sure that it's aligning good for you, and the like. One of the new features with the newest year-end release is you've got the ability to start masking tax ID numbers on the printing and stuff of that. So the actual printing will kind of use some X's and maybe just the last 4 digits of an ID number to help kind of help mask that, but yet show which ID type is being used. So nice little feature there. And then once you got your 1099s printed and stuff in terms of filing, and again, they list an option on page 27 if you need to. Green shades would be one of the real common ones for assisting you in filing, electronic filing of 1096s and the like. Okay. Year-end close is the next step, and it's a very simple screen again. You would be doing just basically all if you're a calendar year type company, it's showing the last time you've run it, and it'd be just hitting the close year type button. I'm just taking a look here. Okay. Don't see any questions in the chat at this point. Good. And that basically completes that the closing of the payables type module here also. The next module we'll talk about is fixed assets. And under financial here, we've got our fixed asset routines. And the chapter starts off in fixed assets, much like the other modules talking about, hey, what this function does. And again, it's kind of um, setting up the year-to-date amounts and opening buckets to accumulate stuff for the following year. The steps are started on page 31, and they're basically saying, if you before you do fixed asset closing, make sure you've closed your payables module first, because there could be something capitalized that might be sitting over in payables that you want to get into fixed assets. Then go ahead and enter all the activities that you've got for your fixed asset module for 2024, retirement, things of that nature. And then they're going to have you run depreciation and make sure you get it run throughout to the end of the year. And you'd be wanting to picking your year end, picking what books you want to do it for, inserting it, and then running your depreciation. You should already be familiar with doing this. You're probably already doing it monthly or quarterly, where you're doing that, uh, running those depreciations. And then, of course, you're probably also aware that running depreciation also requires a step of getting it from the fixed asset module and posting it over to GL. And that's that GL posting routine here, where you could select the periods that you want to do it for, from the first period all the way to the last period, making sure you're picking up everything, inserting that, putting a reference in if you need to, selecting that posting date, and which I would assume would be the end of the year, the current year that you're in, not this demo 2027. Um, but you would hit process. It's going to go find all the journal entries that need to be um, graded over in the GL for your fixed assets and depreciation. And after you process, find those, then you validate it, and then you'd go ahead and you'd post to make sure you've got all your journal entries for fixed assets and depreciation over to your GL. Get that all done, which was step 4 in the process. Step 5, they talk about running your various fixed asset reports that you'd want to do. And they've got those listed in the bottom of 31 and top of page 32. And before you do the closing of fixed assets, they want to make sure some of your setups are right. So under the setup and fixed assets, you've got the calendar. Select your calendar ID and go ahead and do a verify. Make sure all your dates are correct in all the various years. Fix anything that comes back that says it's wrong, and then also your quarters. Select your calendar ID and select the year. Make sure your start, end dates, and mid dates in the quarter are all looking correct, because it uses these dates for calculations. So once your dates are looking good, then you're going to go ahead and proceed on to uh, your year-end close. And you could select your various books from here, insert it, get those selected, go ahead and hit continue and proceed along with your year-end close of your fixed assets. Now, a lot of you may not be running fixed assets through GP, but those of you are, you've got that module then completed. General ledger is the final one before we start doing something under payroll. And it is the one module that if we do have calls and stuff about, where there's been some errors. It's kind of in this particular module. So do pay some attention to the steps we're going to talk about in here. And, you know, when closing the module, after you've got your other modules closed, you can proceed ahead with closing the GL module. Um, after you feel that you've got most of your entries done for 2024. I say most because if you're having an audit and you're not going to get any audit adjustments and stuff until March or April, go ahead and close your year, because you can always post those audit adjustments back to the prior year, and it will automatically adjust retained earnings for you, and it will now, GP works very well to post into the most recent closed year. So if you've closed 24, 25 is your new year, you can still post back to 2024. And there's instructions and things within the document for doing it. It talks on page top of 25, talking about, make sure you got the other modules closed, posting, adjusting entries in the GL, step 2, and it talks a little bit about options there. In step 3 on page 36 is the one that's the important step. It talks about running an account list to review the types. I prefer, using step B, the tip trick that's in there of going to under a smart list and looking at your accounts through here, because essentially one of the keys on the accounts is the posting type that's on a particular account. And it's this posting type that's going to define whether the account balance rolls over or gets zeroed out and closed into your retained earnings type of an account. And just by opening a window, clicking around, if you went to close and hit save, I've accidentally changed this particular account. So it is now, if I were to refresh, it's now showing as a P&L account, accidentally. And this would cause an error if there's got a balance in that at the end of the year. So essentially, you want to come in and scroll through here as one option, making sure that you've got all your balance sheet accounts are flagged as balance sheet. And then it changes right here. I did have that one error up. But then when you get to your first P&L account, everything from here on down should be a profit and loss account. You can see there was a balance sheet one here, but under the account category, it's zeros. That's because these are unit accounts, but you got to make sure your account types are correct. There's some hints in there about being able to do a smart list. Here we did one where we said search, make the account segment, so you're kind of doing setting up some search criteria to show you the wrong types. So in other words, if the account is less than 4,000, the posting type should be equal to balance sheet. So show me the ones where it's equal to profit and loss. I can see that, go in, fix it, save it. And then if I refresh, it's gone. The other one we have is looking for P&L accounts, and all of these, the account categories are zero. So these are unit accounts. And oftentimes those are set up as balance sheet posting types, but I don't have any P&L accounts now that are non-unit accounts that are set up as balance sheets. So that's good. So real important step. If you got questions about it, do let us know. It talks about doing some file maintenance in there. It's good to do once a year. And again, have other users out of the system do it maybe end of day, first thing in the morning. If you're doing those check links, go ahead and print it to the screen first, just in case it's going to produce a lot of adjustments. And again, that is one where have a good backup before you do it. Get your detailed trial balances for the year. You probably want to go to a PDF with those. I'm on page 37, printing out your financial statements, etc., making sure you've got your year set up. You'll probably have that set up well before this. But then you're ready to close the year for the GL. And under routines, year-end closing, you've got where it's pointing to your retained earnings account. And it's just confirming that, hey, here's my next starting journal entry. And then you've got, some of the options on whether you want to maintain any inactive accounts that you might have, maybe all of them or just those with budgets, etc. So you get your options selected appropriately here, and then one click to close the year. Don't double click on it because it's going to try to do it twice. Do it. You'll get a bar here that's showing the progress, and be patient. Let it do its thing. At the end, you'll have a report that will show which accounts are closed out and how much, essentially the journal entry that's going to be the closeout of all the P&L accounts, kind of rolling into what I would call your retained earnings or your equity account. And you can kind of use that to validate that everything's looking good. If you had an error, you do have the ability to kind of reverse, go back, clean things up, come back in and do the close of the year. One other step I like to suggest or tip is under the GL, come in here, GL, under the financial and general ledger setup. Do make sure that you're maintaining your account and transaction history. Everybody's been set up that way at one point, but if someone accidentally was in here and just happened to be clicking as they're trying to move a screen, if you uncheck something and go ahead and save it, you could lose that information, and you'd have to be actually going back to a backup to be able to get that back. So you do want to maintain that account and transaction history there. Whew. So went through that all pretty quickly, but most of you have already kind of gone through some of these closings already, and I want to thank everybody for it. We're going to move on to the to the payroll closing. So for those of you that aren't using payroll or don't care to sit through the payroll closing, thank you very much for your time. And if you have questions, do feel free to kind of reach out to us. And we're hoping that you're going to have a good holiday season here and great new year. Okay, payroll closing. Let's talk about that. So do you want to save changes? Cancel, clear. Okay, so on the payroll side of things, yeah, the payroll year-end closing hasn't changed, so it'll be the same thing from last year. We do recommend, of course, getting the year-end updates and stuff just from the way Microsoft is scheduling updates and stuff. They always say you need to have the last current version beforehand. So if you're on GP or on version 18.5, they want you to have 18.6 before you move on to 18.7. So loading that update each year is highly recommended. If you move to on that payroll addendum handout, if you move to page 2 here, it does talk about some of the steps. In fact, if I even go back to just look and see if there's anything key I want to point out here. Okay. Yeah, so there's good tips and tricks on page 1 and information on page 2. It's talking about verifying that you've got the installed update installed, which again I know I do not, but under administration setup, system payroll, you can kind of verify here. It's payroll tax, what the latest update is that you've got here. So, and essentially, if you haven't loaded the most current tax table, so if there's some updates through the year, if they've made minor tweaks or changes, you probably don't have any of the latest withholding type requirements and the like. Probably it's not a a real big issue other than if you've got some employees where the FICA wage limit is set to $176,100, I believe. If you've got some that are above that, and you are, kind of around that area, you may wind up withholding FICA where you don't need to, or, et cetera. So trying to get an update for that. But then they're having you, complete all your pay runs for the year, complete your month end procedures and quarter end procedures as you normally would, making a backup. And one of the keys before you really close the year is um, i- installing and creating this year end file as on step 6. Let's see here. And under tools, routines, payroll, payroll. Tools, routines, payroll, closing. So in the year-end closing, what this does, after you've got your payrolls run for the year, is it creates a table or file, they call it, of all of the 2025 or whatever year you're closing, 2024, creates that wage file. So as you can then go ahead and do your reporting and the like, and it's running those reports and stuff against that particular file. Um, and after doing this on see, you're then able to proceed ahead, and all the steps are, kind of going through from pages 3 and 4. They're suggesting getting your backups run and then being able to run some of your 1099s, W-2s, etc. And it's talking about that on step 8 there also. And under steps 9, A and B, doing your various other W-2 statements and 1099-Cs and etc. And submittal forms on page 5, talking through kind of doing that under your teams and stuff. So coming down, doing this um, filing. And, it does have options in here in terms of which order of steps you're going to do this. So on page 2 of that handout, it has the year-end checklist, but then an alternate one depending on if you need to run a payroll for 2025 before you complete all your 2024 year-end closing procedures. So be sure to look at that. And of course, we're available for questions if you need to when you get to that point. Looks like I went about a minute or so over, but that pretty much concludes everything on your year-end procedures. Those documents that you have are going to be very helpful resources. Katie, anything else from your perspective?
No, I think you did a wonderful job. I know we did lose most of our people because they didn't need to do payroll, and that's great. Thank you
Yep.
for those of you who stayed on. And again, thank you for joining us today. Thanks so much, Ron.
Okay.
Have a great day,
Thank you.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.